You're not a Muslim, yeah?
Although Islam means submission, not submission to God, and I am submitted to God. So in that sense, I'm a Muslim.
Yeah,
I
so
never
you're
thought
not.
of that till now.
But you're not the Muslim that prays like us and does the daily prayers and fasts Ramadan, and you're not that type of Muslim, right? You're linguistically a Muslim, is what you're saying essentially.
No, I would say spiritually rather than linguistically. I'm a Catholic. I'm a Catholic. I say Catholic prayers, but I've looked at Muslim prayers and they're perfectly acceptable.
Okay, so you are a Catholic, you said.
Yes.
So how can I help you, Peter?
My grandson has had conversations with you, and he follows this program, and he's been very keen for me to talk to you.
Okay.
So that's the main reason that I'm talking to you. He must be following now.
Okay.
And the thing is a discussion and conversation through questions. So I would ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah, go ahead. Of course. Yeah.
You know that we believe that Jesus Christ is the eternal divine Son of God incarnate, not through the Virgin Mary, lived amongst us. Now, I know you don't believe that, but do you believe that it's possible?
What is possible? For Jesus to be God?
That Jesus could be the eternal Son of God?
I don't believe God can have a date of birth. I don't believe God is a limited entity which eats food and drinks and needs air and dependent upon human needs. I don't believe that can be God. God, by definition.
No, but in the Christian faith, the Jesus has two natures, divine and human. In the human nature, he was born and breathes and all that. In his divine nature, he was always he was born of the Father before time began, so eternal then.
Well, I'm well aware of the Christian contradictory creeds, but the fact that I state a creed does not. Yeah, the fact that I state a creed, the fact that I state a creed does not remove the fact that it is still remains to be contradictory. For me to say that God is 100% man and 100% God in the same time is the same as me saying is God is 100% fire and 100% water. You cannot be 200% something because you are 100%. So 100% cannot be 200% by definition. Now, this is the first contradiction. Second contradiction is that the attributes of God and the attributes of man are contradictory. So not only that you cannot be 200% and 100%, but that the attributes of the two things you're trying to combine are by definition contradictory attributes. God is all. That's why I was just saying a few minutes ago. God is all powerful. Man is weak. God is all knowing. Man is ignorant. God. These are attributes. God is eternal. It doesn't have a beginning, have no end. The man is the opposite. Has a date of birth. Is not eternal. God is immortal. Human is subject to death. So by definition, they are contradictory attributes. Now, why do you have... Now, I have a question for you. Why do you think the church came up with this belief, 100% man, 100% God? Because, by the way, it's not in the Bible.
The Bible really is a book written by the church, so therefore what the church teaches and understands and the belief evolves over the centuries is more important to me, that what you might find written in the Old Testament, for example. But in any case, I've asked you a question, and really you've given me a long answer, but the short answer is no. You don't believe that it's possible.
Yeah, I started with no, by the way, but I was interested that you just said that the Bible is a book written by the church. That's what you said. I'm just confirming that you just said that.
Yes.
Okay, no problem. Now, okay, do you have any other questions for me? Yes, my short answer is, there is two answers, right? The first answer is no, from a logical perspective, which is what I was demonstrating. The second answer is that the Bible does not even show that belief. So these are two answers that I can give you.
That to me is a little bit irrelevant, that whether it does or it doesn't.
You're asking from the logic.
It does. I think it does show that. But more important, though, there are more important questions in what you've said, because while I've heard you saying the attributes of God and the attributes of man, I find it moving, but in a positive way, about my belief in Jesus Christ, because I think Jesus Christ has both those sets of attributes. And you say it's contradictory, but I say it's a mystery. Too profound for us to understand. And we have to understand the purpose of this. The purpose of this, that Adam and Eve sinned against God very gravely. And therefore man became enemy of God. And God had to, the only way that God could rescue him was through an eternal atonement that Jesus was able to make by offering his life to God.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What if I said to you, God is a banana? What would you say to me? Can God be a banana?
Well, I would say it would be almost blasphemous, no?
Yeah, so you would reject that, right?
Oh, yes.
What if I told you it was a mystery? What would you say?
God is a mystery. You don't think that God is a mystery?
No, but I'm telling you, if God was a
Yes, I think
banana
God
and
is a
the
mystery. Yes.
banana was a mystery, what would you say? What would be your response to what I just said?
That a banana is a mystery. Well, I don't fully understand a banana, to tell you the truth. Do you?
Okay,
Profoundly,
that
all
even
the
proves the
chemical
point.
reactions and things.
That even proves the point even further. So it's a great mystery because you don't understand it. So that means you're saying you cannot reject the belief, and then therefore God is a banana because it's a mystery.
No, what do you no? You're leading me round and round the mulberry bush. No, what I'm saying is,
Do you know what I'm yeah,
that's
do you know
funny.
what I'm doing with you? I'm trying to use your logic with you because the logic, if when someone represents logical inconsistency in your faith, you cannot then turn around and pretend and use a word called mystery as if it solves the problem. I
Yes,
can do
no,
the same
no.
thing. I can bring an absurd belief like the one I was proposing for you about the banana and say God is a banana, which is an absurd, obviously, proposition. But when you come back with a rational answer, just like you were trying to do a few minutes ago, then I come back with the mystery kind of card, which is you're using a few minutes
Well,
ago,
yes, yeah,
and then
yes,
logic does not matter anymore.
yes. I was saying to my grandson. I was saying to my grandson. He was very keen for me to talk to you, and I say, why are you so keen? I say, because he's so logical and all this, and I say, logic only goes so far with
Mhm.
faith, and I think even you cannot claim to understand everything about God.
I never do.
Do you? No, of course not, because
No, no,
God is
no,
a mystery. Because
no, no.
God is a
But
mystery.
no. But we don't say God is a mystery. We understand. This is the thing. You like as someone who's got grandchildren. When your grandchildren were young, you were teaching them certain things
Yes,
because
yes,
you are clearly a wise individual. When you teach them certain things, you don't teach them that which is outside their capacity. You're trying to simplify the lessons for them. Tell
yes,
them
yes.
things the easiest way possible so they can understand.
Indeed, like,
God,
like the parables of Jesus.
yeah, and God is the wisest, and for God is the highest of example. There's no comparison there, of course. So
Yes, yes, yes.
when God teaches us something, He doesn't teach us something which is outside of our capacity. So as Muslims, we never need to resort to the idea of mystery because it's unwise by definition for God to teach you something that is beyond your capacity. In essence, it's God confusing you. And God says in the Bible, in your Bible, He says that God is not the author of confusion. He would not send you a faith that you would need to resort to the idea of mystery to begin with. So whenever you find mysteries in Christianity, I would humbly propose that this is a human man made up concept rather than it is being from God. And that's why I was saying a few minutes ago that even if you want to resort to the card that this is a mystery that you cannot understand, I will reject to begin with the fact that the Bible or God taught you to begin with that Jesus was God. So I'll reject that proposition, that
Yes,
premise
no,
that
no,
you're
no,
trying to
but
build on.
no. But listen, in our catechism, the old catechism, and now there's new catechism. But the old catechism that I learned as a child, the first question was, um, "Who made you?" And the answer is, "God made you." I think you would agree with that. Now, but isn't that a mystery?
No,
How did God make you? We don't understand.
no, but yeah, there is a difference between the howness in the actions of God and the
Yes,
identity of what God is. These are two separate things. Now, what Christians do commonly, this is something we have as Muslims, right? In theology, in creed, we distinguish between the attributes of action and the attributes of essence. These are not the same thing. What Christians often do is that they try to say, okay, we don't understand how God operates in action, which we would agree because we have not seen God, we have not seen the majesty of God. So how God operates or does something, we cannot understand. But what God is a complete different thing. Now, what God is, that's a complete different route that you cannot use the same idea of how He does something and apply it to what God is to begin with. So when we're talking about what God is all knowing, we all understand what that means. God is all powerful. We all understand what that means. We understand these attributes of the essence. God is not subject to death. God is eternal with no beginning, no end. These attributes of essence, we understand as human beings that God communicated to us because they are
yes.
within the realm of our understanding as humans.
Yes, these are very big subjects, and I have to tell you that I've been nursing for 40, 50 years, and I live in Gibraltar, and there's many Moroccans, people of Moroccan origin who live in our community, and many of them are Gibraltarians now, and
Mm.
and they are Muslims, of course. And I have had them in hospital, and they've been patients of mine, and I've looked after. I've got to know them very well now. Out of hundreds that I've looked after, there are 5 or 6 who stick in my mind because of their faith. And I've been moved, and I've considered them like saints because they obviously very spiritual men. So, you know, I believe that through Islam, one can come to a certain knowledge of God and to penetrate through spirituality and come close to God. And these men have been very holy, and I've had conversations with them. They've been very simple men, but they have taught me real lessons of spirituality. Now, and I think in the very name of Islam, which is submission, we have to learn to submit our lives to God and to accept what happens to us on a daily basis with the most patience that we can muster. But I'd like to move on to another question to ask you. Why is it that Muslims, when they emigrate, for example, in UK, there are many immigrants, Muslim immigrants in UK. They seem to choose UK. Why don't they choose a Muslim country?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. That I would always say to the people, you've got to look at the reason for them moving to begin with. It's not where they're choosing to move; it's the reason for them to begin with. So the if you look at history, for example, if you want to look at Britain, or you want to look at the US, and you want to look at the end of the 1900s, for example, or you look at the 1800s and the end of the 1900s, and you look at world wars, and you see that 90% of African countries, including, we're talking about North Africa and South Africa, we're just talking about African countries in general, including Middle Eastern countries, were under occupation. You mentioned Morocco, which was under occupation by the French. You mentioned Algeria, which was over 100 years occupied by the French. You mentioned India, which was under occupation by the British. And you look at these same people coming to these countries are the same people coming to the countries of their occupiers, by definition. Because what these occupiers did, right? You look at Iraq, for example, people coming from Iraq and these type of countries. And you look at what the invasion that took place, claiming that there is weapons of mass destruction, which is just a lie that was used both by the Americans and the Brits to go and steal the goods and destroy a country which was fine. So when you have the US and you have Britain and you have the UN and all of these countries that make up the UN involving their business 24 hours until this day in the Middle East by trying to cause first the discord and problems, internal problems within these countries, and externally controlling their politics and controlling, who's in power, who can do what, and what you cannot do this without our permission. We didn't give you permission. In the name of freedom, we need to give you permission first in order for you to do any of these things. So when you have these countries they colonized these countries, they took their goods, they destroyed them, and they caused them to reach that level that they're in today, in complete economic destruction. Not only economic destruction, but the infrastructure itself of these countries are completely decimated as well. Those people are forced to move to a better country just for living purposes. Not that they love this country, not that they love the values in this country, not that they say we want to be free and we're being oppressed, as some Westerners try to convince themselves, and say these people are coming for our freedom. Go ask them. None of them are coming for freedom reasons. They're coming for financial reasons, because their country is destroyed. They no longer have the capacity to make enough money in their own country. So they're forced now to travel and migrate to these different countries.
But I'm not so keen to talk to you about politics or colonialism or imperialism. And I know there's full of faults in imperialism and full of faults in the Catholic faith and in the practice of this and that. Rather to get to the heart of the matter, no? The heart of the matter.
Yeah, but you cannot. But your question was about the reason they're moving, and the answer is related.
You've given a good answer. You've given a good answer, but nonetheless, okay. I don't want to deviate from religion to politics. But for example, India, you could say, well, I don't suppose you've seen Monty Python and the Jews trying to throw the Romans out and saying, what have the Romans ever done for the Jews? And they say, well, the roads. Okay, the roads. But apart from the roads, and the list goes getting longer, the aqueducts and the roads. And I think, for example, if we take India, for example, the empire did, for example, lay down the railways. And the English language itself allowed India to work as one, whereas before they had hundreds of languages. And they still do. But I mean, English becomes the language that links them all. But in any case, these are separate.
No,
but I want to ask you another question about the faith of Islam.
Yeah, sure. I'll mention a very quick comment on what you just said.
Yeah.
What you just said is the literal definition of oppression. I'll come to your country, I'll build a few roads, and you will have to adopt my country over your own native language and culture. And that is how you become free. This is just a definition of
Yes,
oppression.
no, no, no,
If
no,
I, if,
no,
if a
no,
Muslim
free,
empire
no,
were to take over any country, that said
no,
you
no,
have to
no,
speak
no.
Arabic, we're
I
gonna
agree.
unify you.
I agree. I agree. If I'd been an Indian, I would have wanted the Brits out as well.
Okay,
No,
I'll let
no.
you ask your next question. Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Yes, no. I wanted to ask you about mysticism, and this is I ask you genuinely because this is an area that I do not know. I have met Muslims who pray and who emanate a spirituality in their lives and an acceptance of God's will in their lives and of being holy. You know, I see, for example, in my own faith, in my own church, for example, when I meet people, there's also a handful of them who are I consider to be very holy. You know, they're very close to God, and they emanate a spirituality in exactly the same way as the Muslims that I've met who I consider to be holy people. So the road to holiness, to being a little bit, if it were possible, a little bit like God in the purity of their hearts and so on. Um, you know, Muslim teaching on the road to holiness.
Now, okay, when it comes to the idea, look, we would believe Islam is Islam, and there is no these either branches that are made up and these names that are used like mysticism, whatever name you want to use later on, which I believe is mostly derived from, for example, you look at Buddhism, you look at Zoroastrianism, you look at, and they take some of their teachings and then they introduce them within the religion of Islam. We believe there's only one Islam. That is the Islam in the Quran. That is the Islam that is taught by the Prophet. There is nothing that we can take from any other culture, from any other religion, that can be useful that is not already within Islam. And why do we say that? Because if it was from God and God said it was perfect, then by definition, nothing a human being can come up with that would surpass that in greatness. So you would say there's no such thing as mysticism. We would say there are a spiritual aspect of the religion of Islam that exists, of course, and that is very important because Islam is a religion that is not just for the mind, which is very important that many Christians don't like. But Islam is not only a religion for the mind, but it's also for the heart. It's also for the connection with God, because as you said, these kind of interactions you had with these very simple people, in fact, that if you were to ask them about these kind of theological issues, they probably would not give you that many answers. But they have the spiritual teachings and aspects of Islam. They're still there, which is that connects them to God. So Islam is a religion that works for all. It will work for someone who's intellectual, who's logical, would like to engage in logical discourse. It will also work for the layman. It works for everyone. Now, unlike other religions, which will only work for one type of people and will not have logical answers to give, for very important questions. And the human beings are minds and their souls. They're not just minds and they're not just souls. So you cannot satisfy one and then push out the other and say, you know what, that doesn't matter. No, it does matter because you're human beings, and that will always remain there. And I'll tell you, interestingly, most of the people who leave Christianity is always these rational reasons. They go to the church, they go to the Pope, they go to the priest, they ask basic questions. The Bible says X, Y, and Z. How can you explain this? And then they just say, just believe, or Jesus died for your sins, or you just have to believe. It's a mystery, all of these terms. And they don't give answers. And the people end up leaving the religion because you're not satisfying the mind, while you're trying to push the heart, while the only way the heart would be satisfied is also with the mind being at peace.
Yeah, well, you can say that. I mean, you've given a heavy criticism of the Catholic Church, which I accept, and is true. But there are other aspects in the teaching of the Church which is available to those who look for it, about mysticism and about holiness and about practices pleasing to God in life, in prayer and adoration and worship and so on. No. These are similarities.
Absolutely.
Similarities. For
Like,
example,
yeah, go ahead.
with Islam, there's the five things, no, that I can't remember now, but
Five
prayer
pillars.
and almsgiving and fasting and all that. Well, I agree 100%. I agree 100% that these things are necessary and are pleasing to God. And I've been looking up since my grandson has been so interested in the Muslim faith. I've been looking up prayers and that, and I find them acceptable. I could use them to pray. If I didn't have my own, which are a little bit more familiar to me, but I could easily pray with those prayers.
Well, my question then is, what is your position on Prophet Muhammad? So, because now we're speaking, okay, Now, we're talking about similarities. Absolutely. I completely agree. 100%. There are quite a lot of similarities between Christianity, Islam. And there's a lot of teachings that we like. And there's a lot of Christian people who are very nice. They're very polite. They're very good in their day-to-day practices and all of that. There's no one who can deny this unless you're a very unfair person. But now the difference is Muslims accept Jesus to be one of the prophets sent by God. They accept Moses to be one of the prophets sent by God. They accept that he had the God revealed something to him and he was teaching the people. They believe in his second coming. They believe his mother was a righteous woman. They believe in the miraculous birth. Believe in many things. And most of the Ten Commands Muslims already follow by definition, anyways, that Moses came with. So, but the difference is these other religions, Judaism and Christianity, would reject Prophet Muhammad. They're not going to affirm, at least the overwhelming majority of them, they're not going to affirm his prophethood. Now, what is your position on that? That is what I like to hear from you.
Yes, but you may think, and many Catholics may think, that Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, is rejected by Catholics. But in fact, the official teaching of the Church is not that. Is not that. It may be that we don't say that he is the prophet, the one and only major prophet, as you would believe, but that he is a teacher of faith in God, a real teacher of faith in God, who, I mean, I from my reading of history, before Muhammad, the whole of Arabia, shall we say, was in terrible conditions of murders and disorders and chaos. And when he came, over a relatively short period of time, he put order and peace and good practices. So
Absolutely. Yeah, the whole of Arabia was killing young daughters, were worshiping idols and bowing and prostrating to them,
yes, terrible.
and engaging in all types of fornication, adultery, and all types of displeasing acts of God. And the only reason it became a monotheistic kind of region was because of Islam, Prophet Muhammad coming. But the thing is, when you say you believe he's a prophet, it's regardless of saying he is the main or not main. It's not about who's the main. It's not like about my toy is better than your toy. It's not about that, all right? It's more about, right, if he is a prophet and a messenger coming from God, then his teachings was from God. And if his teachings was from God, if he says God says so, then God said so. Right or wrong? Do we agree on that principle?
But you see, the thing is that I think you would treat your Quran differently to I would treat my Bible. Because I believe that my Bible, yes, God is the author, but a whole series of different men were also authors, co-authors with God. And the human aspect puts dirty handprints all over it.
Thank you. That's very interesting and very important, because this is what the Quran itself affirms. The Quran affirms that the previous scriptures have been altered, have been changed. And it affirms that the scribes and it affirms that these monks and priests have altered the scriptures where they were given the command by God to preserve them. So what you're saying is essentially the Islamic paradigm. We completely agree with what you're saying. But on the other hand, Islam is unique from that aspect, is that not a single letter of the Quran have been changed. It has been preserved the same way from the time of the Prophet until today. Of course, something is helping that Allah is came later, so it's easier to preserve. But not only that Allah has made it a text that is memorized. Allah has made it a text that is memorized by the heart, not just in the pen. You memorize it from beginning to end. Therefore, no one can change it. No one can do anything to it. So if the Quran is completely preserved, but still, I feel like you've not like kind of touched on my question. My question is, a prophet is someone who prophesies, someone who gets revelation from God. That is the definition of a prophet: someone who communicates from God, gets communication from God, and then delivers it to the people. That is what a prophet, a messenger is, essentially. If you believe Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was that, then what he delivered to his people then was the message from God to you and me and to every human being. Right or wrong?
Yes, but you put it black and white, and I don't see it like that.
Okay.
I don't
Where
see
is
it
the
like
orange?
that, incidentally, even of my own Bible, let alone yours. Because he said many good things, and he converted many people from bad things to friendship with God and worship of God. But did he have the whole truth? I say no, he doesn't.
Which part about what he said was not the whole truth? But still, before we get into that, anyways, do you agree what he told the people? Because this doesn't make any sense. You cannot say someone is a prophet and a messenger of God, and then not accept what he came with when he attributed to God, not to himself. So when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said pray, he said pray to God. He said, this is the teachings of God to you, to pray, to give alms, all of these things that you're mentioning. He said this is God teaching. Not only that, he brought the Quran, which is the verbatim words of God, not his words. So you take him completely out of the equation there. He just
No,
brought a
yes. Well,
revelation
in
from
that,
God. Yes.
and I couldn't. I have on my shelf a Quran, and I haven't read it from, but I've dipped into it here and there and seen this and that, and some of it I like and some of it I don't. As I'm sure the same happens to you if you take up a Bible, and
Well,
look at
there's
the
a difference
beauty.
there. The difference is I cannot say I like and I don't like with God's words. If I know it's God's words. But when I'm reading
Yes.
the Bible, I know this is not God's words. It's been altered and been changed. Some of it is teachings that could be traced back to the Prophet, and some of it are alterations of human beings. Therefore, I can be picky there. But when it comes to the
Yes.
Quran, I can't. So when I read the Quran and I know this verbatim, the word of God, and I know for a fact, historically, even non-Muslim textual criticism scholars will admit to this, it's been preserved completely and fully, the Quran. Then if this is verbatim the words of God, I can read and say, oh, this part I like from God, this part I don't like from God. I'm a human being, I'm a creation of God. You were just talking about submission. We submit to the teachings of God. But let me ask you, just give me a basic example of demonstrating. What is it about the Quran that you didn't like? That you say you didn't like in quotation marks?
Yeah.
One example.
Go among women as you feel like.
There's no such thing in the Quran. What do you mean by that? What do you mean go around women as you feel like?
I opened at random and that's what I saw on a page.
No, but it's not the Quran. I don't know which Quran you're reading, with all the respect, but there's nothing in the Quran. The Quran is has very clear. The Quran and Islam is more restrictive when it comes to opposite gender interaction than any other religion you'd like to put forth. Then Christianity today and what Christians do, and then Judaism and what Judaism teaches. The Quran limits the opposite gender interaction more than any other faith out there. So I don't know what is this go around women as you feel like. In Islam, you're not
Yes.
allowed to touch.
Many
You're
years
not.
ago,
Yeah.
I was in England studying, doing a teaching course because I was a teacher of nursing, and there was this lady there from Egypt. We made friends. No, she was very clever and very religious, very religious. She had her prayer mat and she went and did her prayers and all this. But there were some boys from Malaysia studying there, and because they didn't know Arabic, and it was funny because they treated her with great reverence, and they invited her to the feasts to pray with them and to read the Quran because she was an Arabic speaker and to translate it for them.
Okay.
In a sense, I thought they were treating her like a man, really.
Yeah. So this is like a very like exception kind of example. Something that is not the general rule in Islam in any shape or form. But yes, there's no issues. Like for example, while the Bible, the New Testament would teach that a woman should not assume authority over a man, and a woman, what Paul would teach, a woman should not teach a man. Should remain silent in the church. These type of teachings.
Yes, but you see, and I saw that there was I saw a bit before you came on. you were in a public place, and there was a Christian lady who was haranguing you a bit. There was a Hindu gentleman who came and said,
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And you said that to her about how are you teaching, and I wondered why you were insisted on that. Because Paul said that women shouldn't teach men, no?
But because she's coming, because she's coming as a representative of Christianity, so she should abide by her own teaching.
Yeah, but to me, you see that instruction of St. Paul was time conditioned. He was talking for his time. That was the right thing for his time.
But that's not in
he
the
wasn't
text.
teaching an eternal truth.
No,
because,
but when you
as you know, there are men who have a very low IQ married to a woman who is brilliant and is able to give an answer that he cannot.
Excellent. I agree with you. But what you just demonstrated now is a logical answer, not a scriptural answer. So I completely agree. From a logical sense, this teaching is completely irrational, and that proves that this teaching is not from God. So look, we're agreeing there. But when we look at the scripture, when you read like 2 Timothy 3:16, for example, it says the old scripture is eternal and useful for teaching and rebuking for all times. That's what the Bible says. If you go back to Psalms, for example, chapter 119, verse 160 will say the same thing. And I could quote different scriptures to demonstrate that what the Bible teaches is that the scriptures of its own is eternal and it is for all times. But irrelevant, regardless of that, I'm just addressing the point that you mentioned about the Quran before we move everywhere else. So that there's no such thing as the Quran saying go as any way you like. In Islam, yes, a woman can teach someone or can say something. The wives of the Prophet, after his death, they taught the companions, they taught people, they taught them knowledge that they didn't know. We don't have an issue with that. But there's boundaries. For example, a man cannot touch a woman of the opposite gender. There's no physical interaction between a man and a woman of the opposite gender in Islam, which is not, you're not going to find that in Christianity. They shake hands and do whatever they like. There's no issues, right? And hug and kiss and everything. There's no intercourse before marriage. There is no adultery in Islam. There is no being alone with a woman that is not a part of a closely related to you or your wife or your family member. You cannot be alone in one place with her. That is also prohibited in Islam.
I know that the strict practice of Islam is like that. But
so where is go to women as you please? As you just, or I don't know which kind of verse of the Quran you're reading because it's not there. Right?
Well, forget it, because I could never find it again. That quotation, but that was the impression I got from it. Let me just say something to you about my understanding of the Muslim faith. That from the time of Muhammad to about the 12th century, the Muslim faith gave great technological advances, and in medicine, in architecture, in scripture, in literature, and they were brilliant. I mean, close to where I live, there's Granada and all those magnificent buildings and gardens, and anyway, they were leaders in every field. In fact, the early Greek philosophers were lost to Europe in the Dark Ages. They had been translated into Arabic, and we recovered them in the Renaissance, or the 10th, 11th century. They were recovered by translating them back from Arabic into European languages, and they were preserved for us through Arabic scholars, which is a magnificent thing, because they have contributed a lot to learning. In any case, my thing is that there came a time in the 12th century that there was a leading Muslim teacher who said, a good Muslim only needs theology, not philosophy. And from that time on, there was a great decline in worldly learning in Islam.
That's historically inaccurate, by the way. And like anyone who opens, like, this is the thing, like in Islam, it's not like Catholicism where you've got a person who is called the Pope, and they say he's infallible, and whatever he says goes, and the priests are like infallible, the church father infallible, this and that, what they say goes. That's not Islam. This is more like Catholicism that you're kind of imposing on Islam. Even if a great scholar comes to Islamic history and says whatever he says, it's
but it is never going to say. It's not
I'm just even if he's a leader, it's a leader or a scholar. A leader is even less, right? Because scholars will be taken of a higher position as a religious authority over a leader, So if it's a leader, is even less of an authority point, even.
But would you not agree with me that in Islam there was a
no, I agree. I'm coming to that.
And then a decline of learning.
I'll answer you. I'm coming to that. There's no issues. I'm coming to that. That's why I was saying that what you said is historically inaccurate. But first, I'm addressing the point that what you said there is not only is inaccurate historically, but it's also irreasonable, because Muslims do not base the religion, what people say to be, as you guys use the term gospel truth. We don't take teachings of a scholar or a king or anyone to be revelation from God, that now if he said so, everyone is going to do this. So the whole civilization of Islam is not going to change because one individual or one leader said whatever it is. Now, what happened is the people have started moving away from their own religion. People started to drink. There was fornication. There was adultery. This is what started to happen. In the end, in the decline of what was called the Ottoman Empire, they started fighting with their own. The Arabs started fighting with the Ottomans, and they had the Brits, and they were helping them. That was the reason for the end of the Ottoman Empire in that period. People moving away from the religion and allying enemies over their own brothers in faith and fighting against them is what led to the demise of the empire at the time. So that has nothing to do with just one person coming and saying something. And in the end, there's always every civilization will rise and fall. There's no civilization that remains forever. And if you look at the Ottoman Empire remaining for 600 years, it's one of the longest. You have no other examples to demonstrate. For example, right now that is similar to it today. If you see that, it was a very long reign, right? It was a lot of, as you said, a lot of advancements. You got algorithms from, for example, Al-Khwarizmi. You got Al-Razi, who's a physician whose statues right now in France because of his additions to medicine. You got Avicenna, even though we don't necessarily agree with everything he taught, you still have his books teach as editions here in British universities. I know everything you're saying about that period of history. No one is disagreeing with that. But that was because they were close to the religion. It was because of the teachings of Islam that tells them to seek knowledge. It was because of the teachings of Islam that tells them to excel and become better people and better humans. The minute they moved away from that and indulge in worldly desires, because they became, they started resting and, okay, we are the biggest empire now, so we're going to rest now and start doing fornication, do whatever we like, and now we're going to ally with the enemies.
Yes, it's
this
is what good answer. Good answer.
Okay.
And you've got a good grasp on history, I must say. I was very impressed some years back. With the war in Afghanistan. The Brits had a military compound in Basra, and when they left, when they started to leave, of course they weren't. There was buildings and property that were less protected, and a lot of people came in and broke in and stole a whole lot of things, and the local imam came out very cross and saying to them, "No, stop stealing, take it all back." And they all turned around and took the stuff back. I was very, very impressed with that. Very impressed with that.
Absolutely. The thing about Muslims is like, you compare this to any other faith. If you go to a Muslim, even sometimes the Muslim is very bad, he's living a sinful life. When you go and you quote to him what the Quran says or what the Prophet says, there's always this level of respect. We're talking about overwhelming majority now. There's always this level of respect and reverence, and waking up and coming back to the teachings of God and submitting, because this is a very essential teaching of Islam, and even advising others. This is even a more important aspect of Islam that you're not going to find in other religions. If a Muslim sees another Muslim doing wrong, we advise, we say, this is wrong, don't do this. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, aid your brother if he is the oppressor or if he's oppressed. Then he said, if he's oppressed, we're going to aid him. But if he's the oppressor, how do we aid him? The Prophet said, you stop him from his oppression. So even if our Muslim brother is oppressing someone, we have to go and stop that Muslim from oppressing other people. These are the teachings of Islam that we believe in. So that's what we're calling you to. You've read parts of the Quran. I don't know this weird translation you're reading, which I would recommend you probably don't read again, because it doesn't seem like it was saying what the Quran is actually teaching. So I would recommend the translation for you.
If I had known that I was going to contact you today, I would have done a bit of homework and studied some texts and brought them up for discussion. But in any case, I've enjoyed.
You're welcome to do that. You're welcome to do that in the future. You're welcome to do that.
Thank you. I will. I'm very glad to have spoken to you, and I hope my grandson, who will have been watching and listening, is satisfied. But I've enjoyed this discussion, and I appreciate your grasp on the important things. And but I do wish that you had some good input from Christianity, because there are many heroes of Christianity over the centuries who have contributed to the world, to the good of the world.
Yeah, of course. No one is taking away a certain good things that someone contributed to the world, but we're more talking about theology here. Not even human advancements and this and that. We're talking about theological issues like the identity of Jesus. That's what we talked about when it comes to Christianity. And that's what I would recommend you look at, because whatever other human beings did in history, that is irrelevant for our salvation in the end of the afterlife. God is not going to be asking me what X, Y, and Z did. He's going to ask me what I did. So I would recommend that you focus on the most is your afterlife. Is there one God, or is it 3, 4 in 1, 11 in 1, 12 in 1? Is it one? Is it one? Is it more than one? And
I
is Prophet Muhammad... Yeah,
I have studied quite a lot of theology of the Trinity, and it's many great minds have dedicated, Saint Augustine, for example, to
and he didn't come up with a good solution, because I've read his writings. He didn't really come up his letters. He didn't really come up with a good solution for the Trinity. He's like, either way. Solution.
What did he say? He said it's a mystery. He said,
that's my point.
He had a revelation. He was walking along the shore, and there was a child dug a hole and was carrying with a bucket water into the hole from the sea. And he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm emptying the sea into this hole." And he said, and he kind of smiled. "You'll never do that." And he was made to understand that what he was trying to understand, the Trinity, was like that child trying to put the sea into the hole he had dug.
Yeah, exactly, because it's the banana example, right? So I hope you remember. I hope you remember the banana example. Yeah, and I hope you come back to the text and read. And as I said, if you accept Prophet Muhammad, as you said, that he was a prophet and messenger of God, I would recommend that you take his words to heart, because if he was truly a messenger of God, as you said, the day will come where I will leave this life, and every human being will leave this life, and we need to be prepared. If he was truly a messenger of God and he gave us a warning that we need to follow the Quran and we need to abide to his teachings, or when we die, we will not have salvation, I would take what he said seriously, and I would take it to heart. Anyways, it was a great pleasure talking to you. I've got a full backstage right now.
I would like, I would finally say that I'm very happy with my own faith, but rather than be an unbeliever, I would certainly be a Muslim.
We welcome you anytime.
I think it's better, but rather than being an unbeliever, I would be a Muslim for sure.
Yeah, well, I would welcome you anytime, but as I said, to heed what the Prophet ﷺ said and taught. Anyways, I'll let you go because I've got a full backstage. It's a pleasure talking to you, and I would shout out to your grandson. He's doing fantastic work. He's trying, to kind of also spread goodness to his family members and try to bring them, to more understanding of different faith and religion, which is a very commendable behavior, and I do appreciate that. Okay, I'll let you go.
Indeed.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much. Good night. God bless.
Bye.